What's up, everybody? I'm here with Lord Stout, Fangface. You might know him by some other names. How you doing?
Chilling, bro. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, dog. So let's get right into it. Where are you from?
Battletown, Virginia.
Amen, brother. Hell yeah. So what got you on this hip-hop journey?
That's a long story. You sure you want to hear all that?
Oh, yeah, I definitely want to hear it.
I hooked up with this cat in school back in the day. This would have been late 80s.
Okay.
For some of you youngsters, that's a long time ago. You know, we used to swap music. I've always been pretty musically diverse. I mean, I started out as like a b-boy in like 83. So a lot of hip-hop. Then I got into skateboarding after breaking died out, and got exposed to a lot more like punk rock and hardcore and stuff like that. So we'd swap music and stuff at school. And one day he brought this tape in, played it for me. I was like, "That's dope. What is that?" And he was like, "You know, that's my brother Ben on the ones and twos, and Jay Money."
Rest in peace, Money.
Rhyming. And it just kind of, you know, like the light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, you know, wow, you know, this is like, it's like punk rock, you know, like anybody can do it. You know, these guys did this at home in the basement. I was like really impressed and inspired by it. That was my first exposure to like home cooked, you know, hip hop.
Hell yeah.
At home.
So about the punk rock, which did you play first? Did you play instruments or did you rap?
I've always been like very lyrical. I don't want to say poetic, but you know, I mean words and painting pictures with words. I'm really visual. Musically, the first thing I did was I actually played bass in a thrash metal band. That was my first musical venture ever. It was my man Brett and my man Kevin and my man Heath, and we just played Metallica covers in the basement. You know, from there, you know, I mean, again, a lot of hardcore, a lot of hip hop. So I mean, you know, you got to figure like the mid '80s. You know, you read Thrasher magazine. You know, you had the review for the Danzig record next to the Yo Bum Rush the Show review. So you know, it was like the best of both worlds. I hooked up with my man Russ Love. I've known him since 4th grade. Russ Love, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
You know, he and I went through it all together. You know, like. When you're young, you're trying to find yourself. You're trying to figure out who you are as a person. You know, you experiment and you listen to different types of music, get into different scenes. He and I were going to the punk rock shows together. We were listening to hip hop together. We were going to clubs together. We were skateboarding together. You know, he decided he wanted to start learning how to DJ. From there, you know, I just started writing my own rhymes.
I know when I was coming up, you were pretty much the god of Berryville. But that's just facts. I don't give a fuck.
I put a lot of work in it. I mean, you know, when I go all in. I'm like a dog with a bone, you know? Like, I can't just be, like, willy-nilly sitting on the fence, you know? I feel like I gotta, like, you know, eat, breathe, live, sleep, and shit hip-hop, you know? And that's what I did for a lot of years.
I want to talk about some of these shows. I mean, you probably, out of anyone we've had on this channel, as far as stage time, I think you've got everyone combined beat.
Well, I mean, truth be told, like, I mean, I was very, very inexperienced when I was trying to do the hip-hop thing. You know, I didn't have much experience with, like, booking gigs and playing shows, hooking up with promoters. I mean, we didn't have the internet back then. Everything was, like, word of mouth.
Oh, I know.
Telephone. We had beepers. You know, I was starting my musical journey at this time. It was like in its infancy. We did some local stuff, you know, little like Ruritan building shows. We booked over top of the Melting Pot, you know, whatever little local gigs we could get, you know, and get people to come out. House parties, whatever, you know. So
the house party scene used to be the hip hop scene.
Yeah, that was what was up. What's crazy is like towards the end of you know, being involved in hip hop music and the scene and the culture and everything, I got put on the Necro, who was like an underground New York guy, like the late '90s, say like '97 or so. He was a wild cat. He was a really good producer. He was a crazy rhymer. You know, he was coming with some shit that nobody else was doing. He did 12 inches. He did some production.
My favorite Necro joint is fucking Head Split. I still bump it. That beat, bro.
Underground was dope too. And Cockroaches. Yeah, Necro did a VHS videotape called, it was a short film he did called 187 Reasons Why Cops Should Die. And it was a black and white joint. It was silent, but it had a soundtrack. I used to order from Fat Beats. It had his beeper number on the bottom. I got a few in me one night. It was probably about 3 in the morning. I was like, I'm going to beat Necro. So I beeped him. He called me back. We started jawboning a little bit. We're talking about like, you know, horror movies and hip hop and thrash metal and this and that and the third. We got kind of tight. You know, I wouldn't sweat him or anything like that. I'd hit him up once a month, something like that, just to see what was going on. Again, this was before necrohiphop.com. He didn't have a website. Everything was word of mouth. I knew you could get his records from Fat Beats. After talking to him for a while, I found out that his brother Bill from Nonfiction, worked there. So he'd be like, yo, next time you order from Fat Beats, drop my name. Bill will lace you up. So I would get packaged. I'd order 2 records, and I'd end up with like stickers, flyers, promo CDs, and Q Unique worked there as well. So anyhow, Necro and I got kind of tight. I had a homie that ran an online e-zine. It was called Smother. They did reviews for like mostly like metal and punk sort of type of bands. He knew that I was in touch with Necro, so he was like, why don't you do an interview with Necro for Smother? I was like, all right, cool. So I did this interview with Necro, got a little tighter, you know what I'm saying? And just from chatting with him and jawboning with him, I mean, eventually he had me doing some promotion for him. This was before he had a street team. I was passing out flyers, snippet tapes. You know, anytime there was an event, you know, I'd get a package from New York. You know, I'd go to an event, I'd hand out flyers, hand out, you know, snippet tapes, whatever. But I learned a lot about, like, the business from talking to him and watching him, and I learned a lot from that. I'd say around, like, the early 2000s, hip-hop kind of, it started getting kind of stale for me. I had kind of a life-changing event. I got in a car accident. I was in ICU for, like, a week. I mean, you know, it was near fatal. You experience something like that, you rethink your whole shit. You're like, you know, man, I've been doing this for a long time, and I had a lot of years in it, and I didn't really have much to show for it. So I just completely did a 180, flipped the script, started a punk band. And I took all that knowledge that I got from Necro and applied it to the Deadnecks. Ended up being pretty successful. We toured solid up and down the East Coast. You know, we did a lot of weekenders, a lot of festivals. Played a thing called Heavy Rebel Weekender. I think they still have it. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Blood Feast Festival in San Antonio and Austin, Texas. And we ended up crewing up with my favorite American psychobilly band, Los Gatos Locos.
Hell yeah.
And, you know, started our own little chapter of the crew. And they flew us out there, or actually we flew ourselves out there, but they asked us to come out there and open for them on their CD release party and be in their video. So again, you know, more experience.
So with the Deadnecks, you did something I have not seen anyone around here do before or after. You made a whole movie. Tell these people about the movie.
I mean, honestly, like the whole thing about the Deadnecks was, I mean, the Deadnecks, and it still is, man, is we really, really tried to not take ourselves seriously. We were kind of like a joke, man. Big thing with the psychobilly scene and the horror punk scene and all that. A lot of that stuff's very tongue-in-cheek. I'm a big fan of Herschel Lewis. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the godfather of gore. He would make these really cheap, shitty horror movies for like next to nothing. He was actually a gun for hire. Back in the day when drive-ins were king, people that own these drive-in theaters, what they would do, instead of doing it like they do it now, where like, okay, we're going to show this big Hollywood movie and this big Hollywood movie, what they would do is they would play a big Hollywood movie, and then the owner of the drive-in would hire a director to go out and shoot a film to show before that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, H.G. Lewis was one of those guys. He was a hired gun. In the Midwest, he's from Chicago. These guys would be like, all right, well, you know, we need you to go out, and you've got 2 weeks to shoot this film, and here's the script, and here's the crew, and here's the equipment. Go out and make this movie. So what H.G. Lewis did was, he would go out, he'd set up, he'd get the film done in a week. Then he would take the same crew, same cast, same locations, and shoot his movie. And he was the first, he paired up with David Friedman, who did the Teaserama and Stripperama with Betty Page.
Okay.
Nudie Cuties. And some of the films that H.G. Lewis did were called Roughies. They showed a lot of like deviant, rough sex type shit. Pretty like cutting edge for back then. You watch it by today's standards, I'm sure it was pretty tame. He was the first person to show like full-on blood, guts, and gore on a big screen in color. So, you know, he came up with the recipe for like fake blood. You know, they would go out and buy mannequins and get like mortician's wax and like entrails from the slaughterhouse and use those. A DIY film director, like a guerrilla film director. I've always been a fan of his films.
Hell yeah.
So with Trilogy of Blood, which is what we named our film, we wanted it to be in that vein. Basically the entire film's like, it's a nod to that film. There's little elements of, you know, the first Night of the Living Dead. There's little elements of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just like a lot of that fun, goofy horror stuff. It's got a cult status, you know. So we wanted to make something that definitely like paid homage and gave a head nod to that. I had sat down and written a script at work one day. I storyboarded it. I wrote the story, I wrote the dialogue, drew everything out, set up some camera shots, and we actually had one guy set up to direct. I mean, he kind of like went back at the last minute and like wasn't able to acquire the equipment, and it was crazy. Like, I just left it alone. We just wanted like a cheap piece of shit to sell at our shows. You know,
Right.
We had CDs, we had stickers, we had shirts, we had buttons. I was like, let's make a movie. I started thinking, I was like, you know, we could make a music video, but all of our songs were like a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. So
Right.
it would be like a waste to like you know, set up and get all this gear and do all that stuff, you know, for a 1 minute long video. Gears started turning, and I'm like, why don't we do like Michael Jackson Thrill, right? So you got like 5 minutes of film that sets up the story, and then you got the music video that kind of goes to the story, and then 5 minutes of film after. That's pretty good. That'll make the movie like 5 minutes long. So then I was like, you know what would be cool? Is maybe if we like chained another music video into that, so we could do like, you know, 5 minutes of film, music video, 5 minutes of film, and continue the story, make the story longer. And eventually that's what it was. It was just three music videos chained together with goofy, silly horror themes. And it actually turned out, I mean, for what it was, you know, I mean, it was meant to look like trash, it was meant to sound like trash, because when you set that next to, you know, the material that I was drawing from, the H.G. Lewis movies. I mean,
Right.
You can see the boom mic in the background. You can hear, like, birds chirping. I mean, it's you know, you can tell that it was very, very cheap, and that's what we were actually going for. I mean,
Is there anywhere people can watch this online?
I know that it used to be streaming on Amazon. I don't even know anymore. I've got a box of them at my house,
Hell yeah.
or you can hit up Ruckus Productions.
So what's your top 5 rappers?
Top 5 rappers. I mean, my GOAT, personally, would be Big L. I'm going to put G-Rap up there because he don't get his flowers enough. G-Rap started that New York street shit. If it wasn't for G-Rap, you wouldn't have Mobb Deep. You wouldn't really have Wu-Tang. You wouldn't have a lot of those groups. I mean, he started that grimy New York underground hip-hop thing. And then now I gotta say it, Rakim. I gotta say Kool Keith, just for his originality. Probably one of the first ones to do horrorcore. You know, he was the first person to come up with like alter egos. You know, he brought a lot to the table. And then Nas. I'm gonna say Nas. Nas was like the second coming of Rakim. Like lyrically, you know, he was just so smooth. The shit he would say. Like when Illmatic dropped, it changed
Everything.
everything. It was a game changer. It's an end-to-end burn. What we boys in the train yard call an end-to-end burn. All killer, no filler.
So let's flip it up a little bit. What's your top 5 producers?
Top 5 producers. That's easy. Premier.
Primo.
Cream gets the roses. Muggs. Buck Wild. Definitely. Buck Wild.
Okay.
Dust Brothers. Another crew that was totally slept on. I mean, they basically started Delicious Vinyl with Matt Dyke. They did all that early Delicious stuff. They were like the West Coast Def Jam. Beat Nuts. Definitely. Beat Nuts.
Hell yeah.
Beat Nuts. It's another team. Beat Nuts.
You know the producer that I think's most slept on in hip hop? Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin. Rubin, hip hop, rock and roll, it doesn't matter. I mean, but the thing is,
He made a good Slayer record, and I don't even like Slayer.
hey, he did. You gotta figure he did all that early Def Jam. I mean, he started Def Jam out of his dorm room at NYU. I've got the very first Def Jam 12-inch. The Tila Rock, It's Yours.
Nice.
It might be in my bag the next time I come home.
Okay.
I mean, the Beastie Boys record. I listened to an interview recently with Dante Ross, and what's crazy is I mean, the Beastie Boys' License to Ill it's the record that put them on the map, right? But if you go back and listen to that record, there's certain songs on that record that are Beastie Boys songs,
Yeah.
and there's certain songs on that record that are Rick Rubin songs. Fight for Your Right to Party, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, those are Rick Rubin songs.
Okay.
Hold It Now, Hit It, Slow and Low, those are Beastie Boys songs.
Fair. Like I definitely.
I never thought of it that way.
I never thought of it that way till you just said it, but I see exactly what you're saying.
And another fun fact about that, was it Slow and Low? Yes, Slow and Low was originally recorded by Run DMC. MCA stole the demo cassette out of Russell's desk. They listened to it, and they asked Run DMC if they could do that song. And
Really?
They gave it a thumbs up. Yeah,
That's dope as shit. There is a piece of Beastie Boys trivia I did not know.
I've got an MP3 of it.
Okay, let's keep it going. Fuck it. What's your top 5 albums?
Top 5 albums. I think Paul's Boutique.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was a slept-on record. Number 2, Takes a Nation of Millions, Holds Back. The Far Side, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side.
Fuck yeah.
I think it's an incredible record. It's another groundbreaking record. Jay Swift's production on it is just freaking phenomenal. The same can be said about that record that, I said about Public Enemy, Takes a Nation of Millions, and Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique. I mean, it's like, it's not your conventional standard, this is the way, set blueprint format record. And I think my last, am I on 5?
What we got? We got Paul's Boutique, Nations of Millions, Far Side. That's 3.
3. Definitely Illmatic. What can be said about it that I haven't said before? It changed what we listen to and how we listen to it.
Permanently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, and these are in no particular order. And my last one would be, I kind of wish I could combine these 2 records into one record, but the Beatnuts self-titled. Those guys started as like a production team. They were doing remixes, they were DJs, and they decided to start rhyming. I just love their production, like, across the board. Again, a lot of jazz, a lot of horns, a lot of funky loops, funky percussion. I've always been a really big fan and a champion of Latin hip hop. I've always been a fan of Cypress Hill, Power Rule, Curious, Funk Dubious, Beatnuts. Hurricane G. She was Redman's DJ, and when she spits, she spits fire.
So when you said self-titled, it brought a whole new question to my mind. I just want to ask you, do you listen to the Demigods?
Do I listen to the Demigods? I have some Demigod stuff. I've got, and you're talking about self-titled, EMC. Yeah. I actually have his first record, which isn't a record proper, I don't believe. It's basically all his guest appearances. It's called The Catalog.
I hit a phase where I wasn't listening to any new hip-hop. And my homeboy Jesse Borders is like, you gotta listen to this Demigod shit. And then once I did, I was just like, oh my God, wow, this is real hip-hop. And I just want to ask you because that came up.
I get in that mood a lot where I don't listen to new hip-hop. But the thing is, I give everything a chance. I'm not gonna just be like, without listening and be like, oh, yo, that's trash.
See, I don't even get to that's trash. It's just, sitting in my car.
There's not too much that I really like anymore. I like old school and underground, and I mean, that's the basic food groups for me.
So let's switch it up a little bit, bro. I know you were big in the punk and stuff. Like, what's your top punk bands?
All right, so I'm really I got kind of exposed to punk in the mid '80s. So most of the regional punk bands that I got into were DC bands. You know, DC had a really big hardcore scene, and it actually like rivaled New York in the beginning. You know, before New York hardcore just took over the freaking like globe.
Right. Yeah.
DC and New York actually had a rivalry, you know, but they all sort of had a unity together as well. You know, they'd go up to Boston for shows, down to New York to do shows, or go down south together, or whatever. I mean, honestly, the band that basically influenced everybody, like punk wise or hardcore wise, would be the Bad Brains. I think the Bad Brains are incredible. They're from DC. They're from my hometown. They're one of the first like hardcore punk bands that I got into.
Hell yeah.
I like the fact that they don't just do hardcore punk music. They do reggae as well. Eigenstein / Quickness, like that's when I kind of got into them in like '86, '87. The Sex Pistols, I mean, they embodied the whole like punk movement. I mean, a lot of people use them as like the blueprint for what, you know, you look up punk in the dictionary and there's a picture of Lydon and Vicious. You know, I love the Pistols for their attitude. I love their moxie. I love Steve Jones's guitar playing. I think Jonesy's he's a beast. I want to say the Misfits, but honestly, like, I prefer Sam Hain. I'm a big fan of Glenn Danzig. I like his metal records that Rick Rubin produced. I love the ones that Rick Rubin didn't produce. Like, Sam Hain was more dark. It was very moody. He had like tribal drums. He was doing a lot of experimentation with drum triggers and keyboards and sampling and all kinds of other stuff. And Minor Threat, again, another DC band. You know, they just had so much power and so much punch. And I know responsible for the whole straight edge movement and all that. But, you know, I mean, if you were a skater back in the day, you know, like somebody was bumping Minor Threat. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The Beastie Boys. The Beastie Boys were I would say the first punk band, the first New York hardcore band to become a rap group. Their stuff's basic, like, you know, New York hardcore. It sounds like Adrenaline OD. It sounds like that sound from like the early '80s in New York. They named themselves the Beastie Boys with 2 B's because they looked up to the Bad Brains so much. They wanted a name with 2 B's. You know, but they were all going to the clubs downtown where, you know, you had the punk guys rubbing elbows with the hip hop guys. You had the graffiti writers and the B-boys mixing with the you know, the skins and the punks.
Bro, that's how when the scene's the best, is if everybody's mingling, because then you get then you get it all, bro.
Well, and I think that hip hop and punk rock, they have a lot in common. I mean, they're both urban, like, street music.
So we're about to get out of here. Is there anything you want to plug?
First off, I want to plug you. I want to give a shout out to you for showing some love and respect.
Appreciate you,
Good
bro.
to see you, my man.
Always good to see you.
Hopefully, you know, we'll bump into each other again sometime in the near future.
That's a
I mean, right now, I'm planning on getting my feet wet again. I don't want to give away too much, but I've got some bars that need to go in the booth. You know, maybe a mixtape. We'll see. No pressure, just for fun.
But yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Russ Love, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
I want to give a shout out to my man Troy Severe, Strictly Legit, Lords of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I want to shout out PGO, Pale Garbage Rappers, for giving Joey his flowers.
I appreciate that, brother.
I love you, brother. Thanks for having me, man.
Always.
Right.
Everybody else, go check out PaleGarbageRappers.com. See you later.
Ripping microphones with that stating the obvious. Ripping microphones, ripping microphones, ripping microphones with that stating the obvious. Kicking shit to make MCs back down. Ripping kicking shit to make MCs back down.